Greetings, everybody. It's been a while. Wanted to get some more YouTube content out there, and I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent with releasing content. So appreciate everybody tuning in. And today I wanted to share kind of an over-the-board adventure, and I think a really good lesson. Whether you're a beginner or, a master level player, I think you can gain insight from any game you play if you have an open mind and the right attitude about it. And so this is a game that I played last night at a local chess club, not a very formal club. There's not any like actual tournaments or anything like that, but more just people show up and play, unrated, very friendly, casual kind of environment. And I'm playing someone that I faced a number of times, and I think his rating might be, I don't know, say 1,200 or so. He's played in some tournaments. I know he plays online on chess.com, and I have the white pieces here. And I think there's a lot of psychology involved and I think a really, fun story and an instructive story that you can really benefit from. So I have the white pieces and like, what's going on here? Well, I have an extra piece. And so I've already kind of reached the moment in the game where it's like, okay, now I just need to kind of convert and, find an accurate way to win the game. And so here my opponent also, has played a number of times, and he knows there's a big experience gap between the two of us. So there's kind of an attitude of like, well, how long can I resist and, see what happens, although maybe it's inevitable I'm going to lose, or, some kind of attitude like that. But overall, this idea of like, can I resist? How long can I keep the game going is healthy and a good idea. And I think it's a good reminder that as you focus on your own struggles, it's really easy to kind of forget, hey, you have an opponent too, and they have their own challenges to address. So here, my opponent decided to play rook c7. And so with white to move, I decided to play bishop to b2. And my idea is that my pawn was kind of my bishop was getting a little bit tired of staring at one pawn. So clearly it would enjoy the scenic view staring behind not one, but two pawns. No, just a bit of a joke, but basically what I'm dreaming of doing is clearing the long diagonal with d5, e6, and kind of wake up my bishop here. I've got the two rooks putting pressure on the pawn. My queen is knocking on the door, and I'm also ready to try to, invite my bishop to the party as well. So here my opponent, I remember him grabbing his queen and thinking about moving here, and he said, oh no, back. Let me try that arrow again. He's hovering his queen here and said, uh-oh, back rank. So he decided to chill with his queen, and then I push forward. And my basic idea is that if the rook moves away, for example, to either g7 or say e7, now I'm going to play the move d5. And now I've opened up the dark squared floodgates. So even though I am inviting him to take the pawn, open up the queen rook battery here, well, there's no way for the major pieces to jump over my pawn. So now I can start cruising down the dark squares. And that's going to be a big problem. Like I'm threatening mate. If they try to block, for example, good opportunity to pause the video. How would you make progress here as white? Well, one move ago, I was threatening checkmate, and they're trying to block like so. Well, a very nice line is to simply take. And again, I'm threatening checkmate, and this is where it gets pretty cool. If the rook then captures, it looks like, well, did you blunder? If you take here, after all, the rook's guarding it, right? Well, let's go back and visualize a point. Is if we look at X-ray potential here, X-ray potential down the long diagonal, I'm X-raying a square. I'd love to visit H8 with my queen. Another X-ray potential is the rook battery. So we have the bishop and queen battery, and we have the rook battery. Well, here we have X-ray potential, X-raying through the pawn, H8. So look at that. All of my pieces have X-ray potential and would love to meet on H8. So by taking the pawn, we're trying to threaten checkmate, and we've opened up the floodgates to that critical H8 square. So now they can take our rook, true enough, but now I have the X-ray potential once, twice, 3 times, pointing here on h8. So how do we win the game? A queen sacrifice. And notice the king can't move here because of our pawn. So after takes, I have checkmate. Maybe I'll turn this into a daily puzzle at some moment. But in any case, did I see that during the game? Of course not, to be clear. What I understood was that I was making progress. Because remember, I made the move here in my head to sacrifice the pawn if he's kind enough to take it. Then we go down a different path, which we'll see in the game. But if he refuses, then I sensed, okay, I should push my pawn forward and open up the floodgates. And that kind of reminds me of the idea a good position can often create good tactics, meaning I didn't calculate 4 or 5 moves ahead, just talk to your pieces, going all the way back here. If we talk to our pieces, who's happy? Queen feels good. The rooks are rocking and rolling down the H file. The bishop here, feeling a little bit left out. So when you talk to your pieces, they'll often talk back to you. And here the bishop has a lot to say, and we can improve our bishop and therefore improve our other pieces by harmonizing all of our pieces together. So in any case, my opponent moved the queen back. I pushed the pawn. He got a little nervous about this attack, and he captured. And remember, this is a casual kind of chess gathering. There's not even clocks involved. So we're just playing. And the other main club member who shows up a lot was teaching a new player how to play the game. So the two of us were just playing, and the other person was teaching, and we'll introduce that person in a moment to the story. So here, what was the space left behind? The queen was guarding d8. So now I play queen d8, and he says, shoot, I'm blundering my rook. And basically, he doesn't want to play here because that allows mate in 1. So to his credit, he doesn't resign. He's a little deflated, but he's like, okay, I lose a rook, fine. Better than checkmate. And after here, a very important moment has occurred. Like if we think about it, I started the video where I'm up a piece, right? So I didn't show the earlier stage in the game where I win a piece. And at that moment, it's not that I went on autopilot or that I was coasting, but I definitely relaxed at least a little bit, like, okay, I'm up a piece. Now I just need to convert and be careful. But the and be careful part seemed to slip my mind here because now I was up a piece. Now I won a rook. I have, some mating threats. And for whatever reason, I just kind of relaxed. And to my opponent's credit, he kept asking questions. And he said, okay, well, what can I do here? I could resign. Or is there a question I can ask? Sure enough, my king is a little bit exposed, and he played queen e4. And this is a difficult moment psychologically because I didn't sense danger here. The game's about to end. I just need to deal with 1 or 2 annoying checks, and I'll figure it out. And the problem is I didn't ask myself, what are my alternatives here? In other words, I was like, okay, I'm up so much material, it doesn't matter. I'll just move my king. But incredibly, there's only one winning move here. And it wouldn't have been that hard to find because when you're about to win the game, you may have heard the phrase, the hardest game to win is the one game, not O-N-E, but W-O-N, winning the winning game. How do you win it? Well, it's hard. Number one, chess is hard. There's so many opportunities in a chess game if you're willing to look for them. But the other big problem here is that when you're winning, you often relax or get happy. And here I relaxed and missed the moment. So basically, what is my opponent saying? I'm not resigning because my queen is active and I'm going to keep attacking your king. And so in the game, I have to admit, I fairly quickly played king h2 without much thought. Instead, I'll figure it out. But there's a check to follow. And so if you think about it from that perspective, how do you get out of the checks? Turns out not so easy, as you'll see. So what I should have done is thought a little bit more to be like, hey, I don't need to checkmate today or tomorrow or next week. Even if I lose my bishop here, I'll be up a full rook, right? So what do you need to win the game? That's the point about when you're trying to win or convert. Don't be overly materialistic and feel like I have to take every pawn and piece off the board, and I have to hold on to every piece I've captured and not return any material. No, being up a full rook is enough, and safe king is enough. So here, the only winning move is rook f3. And so the whole idea, if they check from this direction, there's a number of moves that are probably reasonable. But I think to keep your life simple, if you bring your queen back, there's no more checks, right? No more reasonable checks. And therefore, the game from a practical standpoint is heading in white's favor, right? That you're removing their ability to create counterplay. So that would have been a good choice, rook f3. And I'll just point out one other line. If the queen moves here, forking the bishop and the king, now you can block with rook f2. So we're not even giving back the bishop for that matter. And if the queen swings back to e4, now I can play king g1, check on g4, because if the queen goes here, a number of choices. Maybe the simplest is just to play rook f1. No more checks, no more meaningful checks, right? And then we're threatening mate, we're threatening the queen. It's a big problem. So anyway, if they go here, queen g4, now I have a number of moves, but maybe one interesting path, how do I get out of these checks, right? If I block, there's another check. I go here, there's another check. One thing to think about is I'd love to block with my queen, but I'd rather not blunder my queen, right? So here I could play king f1. Why? Because after check, king g2, now my dream comes true where my king and queen are working together to help shield the g3 square. So this way I can play king f1, no other meaningful checks, right? The rook guards that square. No other meaningful checks. We're still threatening mate. So after this check, I can move to g2. And after queen g4 check, now I bring the queen back. Any more checks to consider? Yep, one more. There's that eternal queen f3. And, what do we do here? Well, we could move our king away if we needed to. But maybe the simplest would be just queen f3. No more checks. Push the queen back, and slowly but surely, we can start playing for a win. Like, as an example, if the queen goes back, you might wonder, well, what can I play here? One move I might think about, looks a little bit weird, is e4. And the reason I'm thinking about that move is a possibility, not to say there aren't other moves, but just the idea that if they take, you might be like, what are you doing, giving your opponent all that counterplay? Well, what I'm doing is I'm opening the possibility to trade everything down, and then I'm just up a full rook, and a bishop for that matter, right? I can take a pawn, and bad news for black. So long story long, this was the opportunity to win the one game, meaning respect your opponent's idea, understand your opponent's idea, right? And had I have thought about that more critically, when my opponent played queen e4, I would have realized, hey, it's not so simple. The rooks are not able to shield my king, on this side, unless I play rook f3. So in other words, when I played king h2, I didn't really realize these rooks are kind of useless when it comes to defending the king, and that could be a problem. And sure enough, it was. Queen c2 check. I moved my king to g3 because I didn't want to just move to the back rank and allow him to keep checking me. And by the way, a psychological point, I should have played king g1 because I'm giving my opponent a chance to go wrong. After the move queen b1, I could play, say, king f2, and I'm trying to get him to take the bishop. Why would I do that? Because now I can play king f3. Why not g3, by the way? I could have moved my king there, but there's a check, and I don't want to open up the rook potentially. But by moving here, I give back a little bit of material, and the queen is off that light squared circuit. So it's very hard for the queen to attack, and now I'm ready to win the game. So psychologically, if I would have understood the danger, this would have been a very good moment upon reflection to play the move that I thought was bad. Go back, allow a check, move my king, and hope that the opponent will take, because in truth, they can still draw by staying on this light squared circuit. So a very interesting moment. Like if I play king g3, you might be like, well, where are the checks, right? There's no queen checks that make any sense. Unfortunately, there's f4. And the video is getting a little bit longer than I intended, so I won't show all the details here. But the point is, this is a draw. So if you want to kind of check it out yourself, it's a very instructive moment. But at the end of the day, my opponent did a great job continuing to ask really active questions. He put me under pressure, and I didn't answer the questions well at all. Didn't really consider the questions very well. So here I'm like, okay, I'll play king g3 and see what happens. What does he play? No more queen checks, f4, kind of like what we talked about before. So he plays f4 check, not happy at all to see that move. And I was already starting to get a little nervous and thought, am I going to need to give my queen back and try to win some kind of ending like this? And even if I do such a thing, give that material back, you know, he still has the opportunity to pepper my king with checks, and I'm not so sure that I can escape this. So anyway, just a really incredible moment. So he plays f4. I take the pawn. He checks me. I move here, and he plays queen f5 check. As he was thinking, by the way, I thought, what if he plays h5? And I was actually analyzing, moving my king up, check, move my king all the way up the board, threaten checkmate. And after rook f7, I was like, oh, I guess that doesn't quite work out for me, because after check, he's able to block. And remember, I was looking at this several moves from afar, and I completely missed here that my queen can move to g5, offer a trade of queens, threaten to take the pawn. So again, a good example, chess is a game of many opportunities. So as my opponent was thinking, you know, it really sobered me up, and I was trying to find ways to keep the game going. So I did think about h5 and this mighty king march. Missed a detail, but maybe I would have found it by force, since I had to go up that direction anyway. But here my opponent did not play that inaccurate move. He played the best move, queen f5 check. And at this moment, the other club member had finished working with the new person, and he returned and started watching the game. And this is where my opponent kind of looked over, you know, to the other club member and said, well, I'm working on my first draw against Dane. And on one hand, he was correct, but by declaring it, he almost guaranteed it wouldn't happen. And what I mean by that is I went up a piece, I went up a rook, and I started to relax, and he started to check back into the game. Literally, check, 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 right? He started checking my king, and so he was super focused. And all of a sudden, he's found the path where it looks like it's a draw. And so when the other person walks over, who's just, you know, silently observing, he looks over to say, hey, this is a draw. And so he started to draw his own conclusions before drawing the game. And that was a big mistake, because here I played king h4, giving my opponent the chance to go wrong. I'm inviting my opponent to choose a number of paths, and that's where there's the opportunity for the opponent to go astray. And as he's starting to get to that result, you know, as I was getting to the result, nearing the result of winning, he's very close to the result of drawing. And that's the most dangerous moment, right? So here, if he plays check, I step away, and his queen is off of that checking circuit, right? And if he moves his queen elsewhere, he's going to be in a world of hurt. So what he needed to do is, he was kind of, if you think about psychologically, he was relying on this queen pattern to keep checking. He only pushed a pawn when he didn't have a queen check available, right? Like here, he didn't have a check with the queen, so he's like, okay, I have to keep checking. So he found a great move, but the second he could go back to a familiar pattern, queen attack king, he did so. And it was a correct move. Queen attacks the king again, he does so. And here is where he stumbles. He plays queen f6, checks me, and thinks he's still kind of on a circuit to check my king safely, but now he's in trouble. In fact, he realized there's nothing he can do here, right? He played h5 in the game, and then I played queen e5. And now I'm offering a trade of queens. I'm ready to play d5 to open the dark squares and live to tell the tale. So I was very fortunate to escape here. What should he have done differently? So here, there's two moves that could come to mind. One move might be h5, threatening mate on the next move. The problem with that is now my rooks get to reorient, and here there's a problem for the opponent. I'm ready to meet a check with my rook. And if he ever takes a pawn, I am more than happy to trade queens, and then everything's fine. So h5 not working out. He doesn't want to play a move. Basically, you don't have the time to give me time, meaning you make a move to threaten checkmate, I have a move to improve my rooks, right? So what he needed to do is summon kind of the same energy that he did here, which is I need to open lines against the king. I need to play f4, right? That was a great move by him. And now he had to find one last accurate move, g5. And this move I was very worried to see. And I came to the conclusion, this is probably just a draw, and I might even lose if I'm not careful. So I was ready to, take the pawn. He can play check. Look at him staying on that light squared checking circuit, right? And if I move to h5, which was my plan, there's no way out. Check. Check. What can I do, right? So after queen e4, if I'm like, I will refuse to accept the new reality, I will refuse to accept a draw, I can accept a loss. Because now the rook comes to life, compliments, of those pawn sacrifices. And once I move my king back, all of a sudden I'm escorted to the first rank, followed by mate. So really dynamic, interesting endgame here. And he was so close, but I was actually really fortunate that the other club member showed up. His mere presence was enough to kind of inspire my opponent to say, hey, getting his mind off the game to talk about the game is to say, I'm working on my first draw. And that was basically what guaranteed, to some extent, him missing his path because he kind of lost his focus. He relaxed, he got happy, and he started thinking about a result before it showed up on the board. Can you relate to that? I know I can, all too well. So in any case, long story long, as I mentioned, he played check. I moved away, and I was able to live to tell the tale. So video is a little bit longer than I intended, but I hope the lessons here are pretty clear. The first big lesson, positionally speaking, as I was talking about, talking to your pieces, right? Coming to the conclusion like, hey, my bishop there is terrible. Everyone else is happy. How do I get the bishop into the game? This way. Clear the diagonal and attack the king. And my opponent did a great job hanging tough. And after the sacrifice occurred, I was able to win the rook. And here I sort of relaxed, right? I'm up a piece, a bishop. I'm up a rook, I'm up two big pieces here. I'm feeling great. And I relaxed. And after queen e4, I didn't realize the importance of this moment, right? I was just like, I can play any move, right? I'm up a rook and a bishop. I'll figure it out. And that attitude should have cost me dearly here. And I needed to find the pin. I didn't. He moved back, or I moved back, and then he checked. I thought I was getting out of some of the annoyance. He found a very, very strong f4 check. 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 And we reached the critical moment where he could have, he ended up checking and losing the game. but he could have drawn the game with g5. So I hope it gives you inspiration, when you're playing a higher rated player, or even if you're playing someone that you just get into the habit of losing to them often, which happens to all of us, a frequent customer, as it were. Try to flip that script mentally. Try to embrace what black did for most of this endgame, which was, I'm going to put up the most resistance I can, right? I'm going to try to learn from this game. I'm going to try to ask questions and see what happens, right? And sure enough, it should have paid off for him. He did a great job, should have drawn the game. And in any case, a very fortunate escape for me. And I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion. And I will be back. I'm going to start adding more content. I think I'm going to share some of the daily puzzles that I'm recording. I'm going to start sharing some of those older videos maybe. And I also am receiving a lot of questions from the Improvers Club, and I'm playing games with some of the members there, some daily games. So I've got a lot to share, and I'm going to start sharing more often right here on the channel. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.